land. You sweet dough hides a rotten heart. When the seventh clarion finally sounds, your false history shall vanish without leaving a single word. Wail and writhe in the eternal flames of judgment. For I am the king of total.
This voice.
Oh, judging by the...
What are you
What am I?
What did you...
Oh, about that before. It was so...
Shadow?
And in...
What?
Yes, but...
This is like the time.
Crumbs. This show will not almost rehearsal.
Where are they? No.
Those shadows.
This darkness. And those cookies. It cannot be.
So what better place to kick things off with than the main trio? And today I feel like starting with Ralsei. Ralsei's unused graphics include unused animations of him running down and to the left, flying up and down, and although a single frame of the leftward flying animation is seen towards the end of the game, the full animation isn't ever seen. Then we have unused sprites for Ralsei crying, unused or alternate climbing sprites, walking down, facing to the right or posing like this, but sad, walking up and facing to the right. Then for both Ralsei and Susie, there's this red outline silhouette walking animation, both refer to them as tanking. Then we have alternate sprites for Ralsei's nuzzle animation, some early versions of Ralsei's eyes seen in the Jackenstein battle. There's an alternate version of the trio's group hug, which is complete like this, instead of being set up using separate sprites as the final version does. And then there are several other unused sprites of Ralsei holding the teapot, including looking down and to the left, down and blushing, and then an animation of Ralsei walking to the right with it. Moving on to Susie, starting with the Light World sprites, highlights include Susie walking sideways in her church attire with her hands behind her head, kicking a church pew from the side, angled versions of Susie touching Noelle's shoulder instead of facing left as is seen in the game, and lastly for the church outfit, we have Wide Susie. Then we have several early sprites and animations of Susie eating pancakes at the start of the chapter, including this crazed expression. Several different unused graphics of Susie sitting on the couch with Noelle, including Susie flipping up Noelle's hair, grabbing her hand, which shocks Noelle, Susie blushing and once again making the crazed face, and then most interestingly, I think, is a set of pretty cool graphics that seem to suggest a part of a scene that was scrapped where Susie would have played a handheld game of some sort.
What?
In Chapter 4, Susie and Noelle chat about some of the games that they played, so this may have been Susie trying one of them out, as we can see her focusing, getting enraged, and then holding and walking with a slightly different looking device, and even having it drop on her face. Now, interestingly, there was even concept art that was made for Susie playing a game like this, listed as Gamer Moment, so it's extra interesting to see that this ended up getting cut. We'll circle back to Noelle a bit later, but also meant for this unused gaming bit are sprites of her sitting on the couch too, looking at Susie, blushing, being shocked, reaching out, as well as falling over. Then back to Susie, we have some unused sprites of her pushing something, getting angry while facing upwards, and although Susie is seen holding a flashlight, guitar, and large candy cane in this chapter, it's never in any of these directions. And then there are several additional unused sprites of Susie playing Jess's guitar, including her playing more than just a single chord, her looking around in different directions and blushing, and then alternate animations of her messing up the chord that she plays, as well as having the guitar taken away by Carol. Then moving on to Susie's Dark World sprites, we got some old animations of Susie passing Ralsei's cake, throwing a book, blinking while exasperated, which is thought to have been meant for Gerson's introduction, walking left while angry, alternate animations of Ralsei grabbing Susie's hand, her singing as part of the Lullaby X act move, being surprised in her battle pose, stepping backwards while holding her axe, her running downwards, which is something that's never seen in this chapter, her shaking her blood-covered fist after she crashes the final prophecy, and then one that I find most interesting is actually this sprite of her sitting, and this looks to be very similar to the unused sprites we saw back in Chapter 2, where Susie would have been seen bleeding. With Susie's bloody hand seen in this chapter, as we just mentioned earlier, I think it's entirely possible that based on this sprite existing here, these old Chapter 2 unused animations may have been planned to be reused in this chapter after the final prophecy was punched. And then lastly for the trio is of course Chris, and again starting with the Light World sprites, they include several for Chris and the Soul, including a rather basic two-frame animation of Chris jumping with it in hand, an unused frame of walking downwards, very aggressively throwing the Soul, ripping it out of their chest, a few different unused animations of Chris walking around with the soul out, an early animation of Chris picking it up off the ground, taking it out from behind their back, and then a few associated with Dess's guitar, including Chris, catching it, an earlier animation of Chris snatching the guitar, and then this animation of Chris going to the guitar with a hockey stick, grabbing the guitar, catching the soul, and then pocketing it. Now this last animation is technically used in the game, but it's never actually seen as the game hides the insides of the closet while it plays out. There's an alternate version of Chris playing dead in the closet without Dess's guitar as is seen in the game, some old versions of Chris falling asleep on the Holidays kitchen counter, a sprite of Chris looking down seeming very sad, two old versions of Chris sitting sideways, with one obviously being much more detailed than the other. There's this sprite of Chris that oddly has a bunch of pixels missing from it. There's this unused animation of Chris standing still while piloting wheelbarrow formation Susie, as they're only ever seen walking this way. And then there are quite a few unused graphics associated with the weird routes, including Chris grabbing Noelle and running to the right when aborting the weird route, an animation of Chris covering Noelle's mouth with many more frames than the 3-frame one seen in the game, an early, less intense animation of Chris kicking, and then alternate animations of Chris grabbing Noelle's hand, where they're seen further apart, as well as this one where Chris shows the thorn that they were hiding. We also got some sprites for the ending pre-credits scene, including a flash animation for Chris's eye, a sprite of Chris struggling to sleep with an eye glowing red, and then specifically for when the screen splits into two, showing both Chris's and Susie's perspective. Although, again, technically used, hidden just off screen is actually this sprite of Chris looking out the window. And to add to this, there are two more unused variants of this sprite too. One with Chris's face lit up a little bit, and then one with a silhouette with a red glowing eye. Potentially maybe how the cutscene was originally planned to have ended or something. And then we of course have Dark World sprites for Chris as well, including some for an animation of them running downwards, which just like the Susie one, Chris is never seen running down like this. And speaking of Susie, although one frame from this walking animation is seen in the game, the full animation never is, nor is this version with Susie running. Lacking a proper outline, there's this early unfinished animation of Chris spinning, not one, not two, but 3 early animations of Chris sitting down to play the piano, as well as an animation of them playing standing up, unlike how in the final game Chris kinda just stands there. And similar to the tanking sprites earlier for Ralsei and Susie, there's this red outline silhouette of Chris climbing, referred to as heart, suggesting that it was meant for one of the climbing segments where you can take damage. Then there's this unfinished animation of Chris jumping to the right, as well as alternate animations for jumping left and right while climbing, and then there are a few unused animations for Chris blocking the Gerson statue's attack in the battle against it. The animation that is used is a dark version of the sprites where the legs and sword are obscured, and as such, his shielding, blocking, as well as this animation of Chris clashing with the statue like this all go unused. Now moving on to the Light World NPCs, let's start with Noelle, and in addition to the sprites from the scrapped gaming bit we went over earlier, some more notable unused graphics include some unused and alternate versions of her walking around in her church attire, walking around in her normal getup but blushing, some alternate versions of her with her strangle face, her blushing so much that her entire face becomes tomato red, her reading a book and laughing. There's a trio of unused Noelle dialogue portraits where she's seen looking less than impressed, to say the least. Unused animations of Noelle shaking Susie while on the couch, her looking upset, and with the file names for these referring to stealing a car. I guess there might have been a scrapped bit where one of the characters would steal a toy car or something. And then there are also several animations of Noelle walking around with the pan in directions that aren't seen in the game. And keeping with the Holiday family, we also have unused graphics for Carol, including her walking around down and left with the guitar, as well as walking every direction but left without the guitar. There are a pair of unused dialogue portraits with her looking annoyed, what else is new, as well as this strange one with some sort of unexplained stain on her face. Then for Rudy, similarly, we have unused animations of him walking with or without a cup of juice in his hand, despite still holding out his arm as if he's holding one. Then we have several unused graphics for Toriel, like some more unused church attire sprites, including some of her talking, walking, as well as clapping. Then some more talking ones, as well as her gasping after she's had a bit to drink. There's an alternate animation of her dancing with that one skeleton fella. And speaking of Sans, there's also an unused animation of him waving, as well as sprites of him shrugging. And next, we have several unused graphics for Asgore, including him walking up while either in his housekeeper getup or while holding the flowers, various sprites of him with his cleaning gloves on, as well as this pair with him holding his cleaning supplies, and then there are also a few with him holding the snack tray, either walking down with it, walking with it all sad-like, grabbing it, and then my favorite, this animation of him snacking away with his shocked face. Only the first frame of this animation ended up getting used in the game. And while we're talking about Asgore, there are several unused sprites of him, Sans, as well as Undyne, often seen in her Undertale style, rocking some scissors. Now, all of these were actually seen in the Deltarune newsletter of spring 2024, where Asgore and Undyne are seen double-teaming a bush that's half Toriel, half Alphys, before it then looks like Sans, as the real Sans pops up behind it. And yeah, all of these sprites, including the bush and Dustcloud ones, are probably left over unused in Chapter 4. Next, we of course can't forget about Birdly, who has 4 dialogue portrait graphics that go unused as well. 2 of them looking annoyed, and then 2 looking more disappointed or sad. Then for some of the more minor NPCs, we have QC walking to the right with food on a tray, and then left without